modifies all lines of time frame line sequence into 4 centers of scale. Now, in Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, there's no DQ. We already know that line positions. Thursday and Friday will be set up in preparation to your test and review evaluation. So I gotta get you guys to understand how to come out of your thought lines, actions, and emotions and come into video graph screens in a 12-dimension Earth point 024. You have the platitude location setting. Because your position your time capacities and high time volumes and line screen diffusion and flux is processing more levels of video files and rotation. Knowing exactly how to convert your system and understand how to see your thoughts of movements through action channels of operation through CCTV, your HD or HDMI. That gets in locations into focus, location setting, higher definitions, and set lines of travel and TV receptors. This helps you to identify your system, software calculation. Okay, so box frame, child's point graphs, communication settings, operation sequence. That's platitude location. Okay, so moving box frames, 4 centers, 5 centers with scale, 6 lines of measure, 7 lines of 8. Okay, so we're just traveling lines, high direct centers into polarities of design line and rotation lines of spin cycles. So properties of the design lines, I sequence, I channels, I operation, set position operation. Travel point lines of graph, directing ground centers into HQ, process indicate lines of flux, travels point lines, activators, line screen adaptations, operating unit location setting calculation lines, I sequence, drain line I, log into space, routine over line sectors, vectors, and quads, put them in routine, process line direct centers, give them a tour and rotations into property design lines, into general AI space-time, space odysseys, rotation lines of travel, get them in communication convergence, author operator setting and calculations. Okay, have fun. You're traveling and setting the sequence now. Granted setting is calculated and modified. So that gets you into 20 measure, 20 scale, 20 provisions, 20 cycles, 20 million frames per second per square, percentage over pi. Modified line centers, directing run sequence, and set the square root. Okay, it's all set. All right, so that's done. So we'll just fast chart the charter waves, directing ground setting sequence of triangulation lines or lines, flux over screen adaptation and processing. This calculation modifies how we see everything measured. Triangulation over here, triangulation over here, and triangulation over here, right? And movement channels of operation. You guys have to understand the central systems now because it's not going to be thoughts. It's going to be a film projector, slide projector, through viewfinders. 3 bedding over screens, 4 centers of flux, travels of point graphs, overline signal location setting convergence. So everything's going to be start moving through video file lines. Travis line course centers directing ground centers transits. Okay, transits over lines, information line cycles, cell generation modifications, ground centers calculation lines of property, data assets, information setting. So it's going to feel like Minecraft. More lines of distribution centers, longitude and latitude of streaming, transits over screen, transits over pi of indication. So this helps you to measure your scales of communication, how to platitude your longitudes and latitudes, and your coordinates in your longing streams, directing location of your system in your streams and connection setting, and streams of indications that helps you identify yourself into Finder. Okay, Finder is the foundation lines, fast volume. So the connection setting process lines of the foundation location lines of V centers, mass, volume, volume over mass, equation lines EQ, DQ, EF line rotation, travels lines in the capital lines to capita, directing course centers in escrow, directing lines percentage of real estate, process lines more engaging. So you go higher, you process your indication system off your travel. So this helps you to see yourself at higher information setting into the connections of Earth. Okay, Earth line, directing ground center sequence into opposite 0.24. 12 digit line rotations, 12 set lines, 12 cycles, 12 locations. Clockings over 1 over 2, 3 centers of flights, process lines of 1 over 3, process 1 over lines of 4, process lines of 1 over 2, box frame, and travel communication. Bedding over screens, adaptations of process lines of angles. Indicate course centers, select your line grids, ascent lines of travel. This helps you identify your longitude, your latitudes, your streaming lines of indication system, how you go through platitude locations and lines of travel. So It's all lines of sky grids, sky lines, sky communications, convergence centers. There's Skynet. Some lines of travel, see? Skynet. So this helps you to identify how you process your thoughts and angles, how you indicate, position your actions and your emotions, all right? Division lines, layers of sequence, layers of travel, layers of indicates and setting into your ROMs, your CD-ROMs, your graph screens, your central graphs, communication graphs, embedded graphs, rotation graphs, communication graphs, high core centers graphs, default graphs, and set lines of travel. Indicate, processing, directing grounds of graphs. Ground centered sequence, platitude location of graph communication. Platitude energetic chart waves, echo flow charts, and locations in longitude and latitude. Waving screens, adaptation of processing, 4 centers of communication XD1000. Indicate 1/2, 3 centers of travel direction. So this helps you to really understand how to use the graph screens into your human resonance. Now this is where it gets really interesting. How to use your telepathy at a faster rate in the percentage of time capacitor, time volume, body capacitor, volume itself, the mass, the vacuum, the volume, the vast, and all levels of velocity, okay? So it puts you in time capacitor and percentage of what you're doing through the 8 line settings of sequence. That gets in communication setting equals lines of 8, process lines of 8, 8, 8, instant conversion equals, equation triangulation into flux over screen. So this is going to help you to identify your settings, how fast you're reaching your thoughts, actions, and emotions in a video graph screen, okay? This processes your settings at tele-waving, telecommunicating, telegraphing line 3 centers, boxing frame triangulation over lines, ground centers, and line position lines of pi, right? Volumes, mass, distribution centers, EQ over lines, and direct lines of solar graph. It's all lines of measure, it's all lines of scale. Now, for you guys to indicate these things, this helps you to really get into the blocking system. Yeah, sending lines of travel, and then communications. So right now you're going through my distribution centers, import, export, what I have in my properties, what I have in my assets, my equities, my performance, how I get into all different lines of settings, your ledgers, your fiat financial system, all through structure that's created in your holographic city of set design. So I'm going this very fast, guys, okay? So you have a higher level of set position because you have to get ready, get out of the stillness. Okay, you're no longer being photo stills. You will be in operation stills. This is the off-screen psychological system. Your mind's going to be converting setting, the time frames through embedding. 4 centers of communication lines of travel, okay, into a graph screen, adaptation of flux. Process of indication setting is travel as direct lines of grounds. The process your indication system, how you set it. Through pyramids, 3 centers, astral projections, astral travels, astral connections, and set calculations of graphs. Set coordinates, directing ground centered sequence, pi generation lines into flux over screen, into travels and recognition, okay? Platitude location setting and ground lines of sequence. Okay, so it's all vision, it's all cortex, but you guys are getting ready to come into your truth lines, your false narratives. Now you got that process line, space line, time center locations, but the convergence now in the pyramid line and line communication November 1st is going to be platitude locations into your dimensional and your solar cells and travel. Okay, so your flight manifolds are going to go faster in set lines of travel. Setting convergence line positional locations, humanity line screens, 3000 time frame, per frame per calculus per pi. Set position activators, 2 million square root per pi per second per calculus. Direct lines information bits, nanobits over second. Flights over lines, manifolds over set travels, directing ground centers. Operating units, 3 million set travels, start position 1 million miles per second, square root. Kilometers over seconds over minutes and hours in frame. So they'll no longer be in position into hours and seconds. They'll be light years away. Live in the cycles and set lines of travel. That's that calculation. All right. Getting used to your dimensional solar cells helps you to identify your video graph screens, how you convert your systems and setting lines of travel. Coming in position line, sending a video file. Okay, the longitude and latitude is too long in streaming, right? So you have to shorten your time edit space. You have to process indications and setting because it processes your calculations, how you see your beddings, at 3 centers of travel, or 4 centers of scale, or triangulation over box and set position, right? So that's how the symbiote and symbot, that's how they set up their video graphs. And they set it on a window frame and of course lines of viewfinder that process that calculation. Ground centers, platforms over screen, directing set position, structure divisions, open signals, open grounds and set travel. Okay, properties of design. Okay, there's the video file. Now the video file is basically here in setting sequence. There's the face. Okay, and set lines of travel. Okay, open up file just like anything else, and you have file indicators above the system and travel. Okay, now that sets lines communication setting. There's play just like anything else, rewind, fast forward, and all that line position. It's all set up. Press play, go through the video file. It runs the system, lines of travel. Now let's say it's a 2-minute file. Okay, that's 2 hours in frame. That's 2 million frames per second, and that's 2 billion frames per calculation. Now, it's really understand how to go through 222 or 333 or 444. That process U indicates the system how you go through the energetic flow pattern that processes your E-core centers. An E-core is a correlation lines into communication lines and directions, knowing exactly how to go through flight manifolds and your flight manifest. You guys have to process that because that puts you in convergent system in your network systems and travel. This is going to help you to design your systems, how to go through your mainframes and time frames, and correlation fractals, lines of fraction. Picture frame and set lines of travel, okay? Your picture here, your picture there, okay? So you got a picture frame here, 2 parallelism settings, 1 in presence, triangulation, and all levels 1 in pass, triangulation, okay? So that's two files, the EQ, rotation lines of directions, and ground setting sequence. Open up the file, okay? There's the face, and set lines of travel. There's the video file that opens up. As the video files open up, remember, you have high position lines of rewind, fast forward, pause, and set position, right? So you catch on very quick, very fast, but you have to really understand how to process your thoughts, action, emotions going in the same direction so it can set the same video file. We don't want you to split your anomalies of thought, action, emotions going in opposite directions, okay? Or you can't get into file convergence. File convergence has a set travels that processes the outline screen location setting that gets you indicates in system how to go through your indicators and time frame. Now this where comes in time replacements and video graph location. So once you get into that, you truly understand that you start to see things. So let's say you want to send an emoji. Okay, so an algorithm, all right, say 2 seconds with a smile, right? So it runs this system and it keeps running it back again and again. Convergence over time frame, convergence over track frame, and convergence over now frame. So it constantly runs the program, and once the program finishes, it keeps going over and over and over. So everybody's going to have that video file, and they can store it in their archive, or they can place it in their data operating system, which is their files of indications or their folders. So it's very powerful how you come into that video screen. As you come in a video graph, you understand the running film strip that processes your system into your viewfinders of travel, directing ground centers in sequence. Platitude line rotation travels point graphs into video line position. Running sequence over 3 centers of calculation. Okay, so the reason I'm doing this so fast, because I keep saying this again and again and again, you have to modify your time frame because everything's set up through an algorithm, through coding, through encryption. So remember I told you about the triangulation? That's open file, right? So that's a video file that you send through a triangulation box. Okay, that's what you send them, right? So that triangulation, change the triangulation of time, change the triangulation of flux, change the triangulation of line conditions, open sequence. Ground centers, on center, on communication, on travel, okay? It's all through platforms, it's all through communications, it's all through grounds of sequence. Okay, apply to 1, 2, 3 centers of sectors, vectors, and quads, and set core centers. Directing ground centers lines, set location and travel. Directing triangulation over lines, triangulation over flux, triangulation over travel, triangulation over lines position is operation. So you got to get control with your modification of your thoughts, action, emotions through a video file, okay? Because everything's going to be running your operation system now through your calculation of EQs. EQ is the equation line that processes you in the quantum line and direct line communication of formulas and an equation to a system through all levels how you come into your own serum. Serum line communication is your equations over your own formula over Q. Getting position lines E frame, existing line, okay, E frame lines, G frame is the game, into framing line 1 and process lines over 2. 2 track center convergence, 2-minute line file, setting sequence, and travel. Team member, correlation through communication lines. Seconds, minutes, and hours. Now you can set that lines of travel 3 centers of bedding into 4 centers of travel communication, right? Sets open line signals, portals sequence, ground centers line position over pi over travel, okay? So you got mail, convergence setting into 3 centers. Convert the system mother load, process lines of 4 centers of travel communication convergence, okay? So there's a ways to understand how to receive all this, all through travels and set calculation. Okay, see? Same thing, right? Information panel, all through structure of design line. So remember, it's all done through no memory. Now you'll be able to process how to use yourself as 12 dimension into Earth. Okay, so it travels in directions and settings. Process calculations 0.24, right? And set lines of travel. Okay. Now, living the 12th dimensional scale is a process into properties that are your equities and your liquidities that you come in information setting to positions. How you process this of indications how to use the mind, a collaboration, a partnership. As you go faster in the mind, you get out of 3 million, you come into 6, you come into 9, and you come into 12 million. 3, 6, 9, 12, right? Step and procedures in walking screen adaptation of stepping, all right? All right, so you got the 3 million, now you're in 6, now you're in 9, now you're in 12, right? So that's the position location. Always start with the Earth. 12 equals lines of E, 0.024. That's clocking 24 constellation lines and triangulation. Now this word comes into all position hieroglyphics and square roots over screen adaptation and processing. Directing line grounds, pyramid activation screen, 1 centers, 2 over travel, EQ over line, 3 is centers, 6 over measure, 9 over scale, and 12 over scale, communication. That process line indicates high centers of 4 solar cells in 1 center, 1 file of indication. Complicated, eh? So it's important you understand how to go through flux screens, a time capacitor, body capacitor, mass and volume that puts you in position to video lines of files. Your temperature readings, your barometers, and your compass is process of indicates and setting to 144 flux, that's teleportation. All right, so now we go in the ground lines of sequence, platitude 4 centers, directing 1 center of operation in your crop circles. 0 operation, this is where you come to your docking station, docking bays, hangar bays, come into launch pads, knowing exactly how to come into all communication convergence, directing ground centers in your crop circles to your dispatch, okay? So it's 3 circles and setting of operation, setting travel, okay? Now remember, don't look at the flat surface, look at the longitude and latitude of the bandwidth, okay? Look at how you see it from above and from below in this position and that setting. So this is what it exactly looks like in set rotation, okay? Circulation and rotation all together, okay? So as soon as you just stop seeing flat surface, you start to see the high lines of communications, right? Directing centers, operation sequence, platitude locations into narrative system of view. Okay, let's get into, just get into a flat box frame. Okay, that's running the system by itself. And 3 centers of projection. Okay, now as it's going through frames, it's going through the seconds, minutes, and hours, minutes, and seconds. And when it goes to hours, minutes, and seconds, it's basically going faster and faster through space and time through provision. So your slide projector changes all lines of its polarities to set lines of communication. Common convergence, property of design, operation sequence, and 3-line position and probing. Now, once you understand that, then you understand the modulation system that correlates to communication and convergence setting lines of travel. This helps you to identify your system, and once you come into positions, box frames or video graph screens that come to you in its setting. You got mail, 3 graph frames of videos. So you open up those video files into the set lines of rotation and travel in lines of 3 grounds, set convergence, set travel, right? So it's really easy to understand the video lines, how you come into the modification grounds, how to convert the system in 12 division, 12 rotations, 12 cycles, and 12 locations, right? Anything below 12, now you come into 11, 10, and line sending location of its cycle. Let's reset core centers convergence, directing ground centers. So you got 12 lines, 11, okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 7th dimension, right? Now, anything above line, okay, you're crossing all position on the constellation, right? There's 3 constellation paths of inferment that you go through, right? All right, so you have line position that transits over flights, transits over directions, and transits over line rotation in the false narrative. In that position location, your solar system is above the system of 144. But again, anything below 5 center, 6 line into 5 rotation, okay, you're in the solar system of lower frequency. And you got to be very careful because that's its own magnetic force as that runs of travel. So it's important to understand when you come to your distribution centers, your properties of your designs, or your imports, your exports, you know exactly what you're doing through transit. You know exactly how to come into your emails, how to formulate and simulate yourself through your own projection, how you come into that through slide projector, through your viewfinder. So you know exactly how to go through 12th dimension, 11th dimension, 10th dimension, 9th dimension, 8 and 7 and 6 and 5, all through graph, right? And these are all pyramids, all in its own settings, of its own intelligence, of its own design, okay? So that's why I want you guys to stay above the system, because this is where it comes into all of your financial fiat system through an overdraft. An overdraft is minus anything of 0, okay? So anything minus 0 is the phantom zone. Now that's a formation setting, equal lines of EQ. Live in the cycles, okay, of minus 0.24. Minus 0.24, okay? So there's a lot of difference in minus and position of point. Pointy graph is 144 flux over screen. Anything minus lying direct at said location is the opposite location, which is the opposite of your polarities. So you're living the void, a set position of vast, volume, and velocity into an underground sequence of 12 centers of scale. That puts all position of your pyramid activation rotation lines as set lines of sequence, okay? So you live in the platforms of intelligence, okay, below the nebula, okay, which is the recognition of star frame. So star frame, star frame, star frame, 3 star frames in travel. Process lines at 1, okay, so it's calculation screens. Process lines at 2, 3 centers of scale of communication. All through directions, all through location. That's back and forth, set travel, and convergence in directions. It's traveling very fast. So I'm just going through videos, files, guys, so you have a true understanding how this all works in setting, okay? So it's important you understand you have 2 solar systems, one above 144, one below 12, all right? Now, anything below 12, remember, you live in the minus, which is changing your E-course, your E-channels, your flight manifests, your manifolds. That processes your set locations to your navigation system. That changes everything through your settings, okay, through your teleportation, okay? So it's important you understand how to modify that all through travels of recognition, okay? Okay, so let's get a position of balance, okay? Let's get above the system sending over lines of screen and adaptations of process of indications, okay? Now, that indicates the grounds, that indicates the ground centers sequence and ground centers is travel. Okay, puts position lines of point graphs, earth line rotations, 3 centers communication setting, 3 scales of communication lines of flux. Okay, travel point graphs, triangulation, over flights, 3 centers, 4 centers, 5 travels. There's your pyramid, all right? So that's what a crop circle does. It creates a pyramid. The case of the pyramid is now a dispatch center. So it's really interesting how we set up through all lines of Discord. The Discord is a high course center communication setting, process lines indicating lines of flights, and a 411, and sent lines of travel. Okay, information. So the information comes from Jupiter and sent lines of travel. All right, 3 centers of calculation, distributions, earth line rotation, circulation, and rotations. Right, so nothing's a flat surface. Okay, so when you're walking, you're looking at the dimensional layers. It's really fascinating, guys, when you look at it, right? Okay, so you're seeing it at this level now, okay? So you see it at this, and as you're walking further and further, you're seeing the bandwidth of what you're looking at through travel now, okay? That's what you're recognizing, how you're seeing this in all information systems, all through calculation. So you just see the mass, you see the volume, you're actually walking in that position, so nothing's a flat surface. I always thought, you know, I'm looking at a picnic table, right? This is what it looks like. You know, I said, oh, this is a flat surface one set position operation. I thought it was pretty powerful stuff how you look at that, right? There's a picnic table, right? So it's the angle you look at things in a 4-setting in sequence. So the actual table is always straight, right? But it's not, it's a holographic line. So the platitude locations to create the actual table itself is the line signal, its longitude, and its latitude location system, all through calculation setting to its travel. That puts modification grounds and all sequence location system, all through adaptation of flux. So you can add yards, widths, over length, screen adaptation of travel, that process that set position of its operation and set of travel. Calculate and modify, and screen adaptation of cycle, height generation locations. There's the table, okay? So as you guys are getting to hard lines and setting locations, you're leaving the flat surface of circulation, okay? And you're just coming into the volume of lines of layers of multidimensional levels, okay? Embedding over screens and set lines of travel, okay? That's what you're all coming into now, okay? And then you come into triangulations here. There's a triangulation there. There's a triangulation there, okay? So, and every time you come in that position, they just get bigger and bigger. So now you're actually seeing yourself in the holographic stream. So you're actually inside the hologram. So when you walk in a building, you're walking through the building. You're not looking at the building. Nothing's solid. It's all projection, how you see your minds. Adaptation of flux. Process triangulation. Settings operation setting sequence. Okay? So that is this first. But as you're moving closer and closer, you're not seeing flat surface anymore, right? So what you're getting in positions of, it gets a lot more complicated as you're going faster through videograph now, because you're coming out of the stillness of invert structure that you created through schematics, through primers. So the primer, the actual pyramid, starts moving on its own graph of communication, of its indication. Okay, it starts moving its platforms, it starts moving its triangulation, it starts moving its time capacitor. So nothing is ever still, nothing. And then you process the indications where the binaries constantly shift the anomalies as travels of space and through the templates and the tablets of space and time. Okay? So always know that when you're looking at something, it's always in a different shape. It's always in a different space, it's always in a different time, but it's always communicating with you in the space-time. So the body doesn't get confused of what it's doing when it's using its telepathy, guys. Through its video finder, through its astral projections, through its astral connections, through its travels, okay? Because you're just astral projections of yourself, nothing else, nothing more. Now, when you convert to that, you understand how to live in the 12th dimension, into Earth, okay, in sequence, which is the outbound setting, okay, the out layer, and that position of point all levels of 0 to 4 in set sequence. So it's going to be really interesting too, because there's not going to be any more stills. It's all going to be video strips. So you guys are going to be seeing this now. Okay, pixelation setting. So your pyramid is going to be this. Starts off with that, but as you're moving, you're changing the percentage of time capacity, body capacitors. It's process lines of 3 over 6 over 9. Let's process that, 3, 6, 9, right? So 6 lines of scale. 3 centers of grounds, and 9 lines in set rotation. Okay, so it's really interesting how you start to see the massive volume at speed, acceleration in time, through your capacitor's body and your massive volume. Okay, so you're going through all those 3 centers, all lines of travel, into a location grid. Okay, so you have to stay in the location grid because that sets up the portal. That sets up the Stargate, okay? In set position of travel, guys. It's important you understand that. Live in the cycles which you've always lived in, right? Not a 3-dimension, not a 3-dimensional scale, and definitely not a 3-dimensional story that never existed. No directions, no time, no measure, okay? Because you can't go above that. See, that's where the separation. You're separated here, right? 4 is over here. And 5 is up here. That's where you kept yourself separated. So you're separating 2 lines of sacred lines that equal. That process lines of anything of mass and volume and velocity. 1 equals x equals 1. Okay? So, it's interesting how we plotted 2 locations, how you come to 3 grounds of sequence and 4 lines of travel. Okay? That puts all lines positioned in your pyramids and rotates lines of flux of communication. Because it's nothing but pixels of travels a set time. Okay? So, that's what you guys created. But there's no separation. Right? So when you separate that, you put past, present, future, separated in set location. You change 3 lines of setting in film projectors, 3 centers offline. This is what you did in position. Okay? 1, 2, 3 dimension. So you got one projection here, you got another projection here, another projection here, but where's the projector? There's no projector. Okay? You were living the outside. You weren't living the inside position. That's what keeps you separated from above and below. See? Equal sign. So it off position your polarities at lines of sequence. Travels the point lines into dogma, not dharma. So it basically it's an off communication lines of grounds. I'm just getting you guys to understand the platitude locations where you come into high levels of settings, how to get in position of releasing those panels using your telepathy through a video that's going to be set to you through telekinesis as you communicate with each other. Okay, I'm going to send you a video file. It's 5 minutes, but I processed it 5 hours in space. See, it's like when I want Chunchi, right? 5 minutes. Now it depends. It doesn't have to be 5 hours. It can be 5 million frames per second. That's light years away. And that's what the team and units are coming into. And they have to process their speed all through time capacitor, body capacitor, or through volume. Your percentage of your brain convergence is trying to stand the adaptation of equalization. Process lines embedding, affirmation sitting, and 4 centers of grounds. And your platforms and set location of faults put you in all position lines of travel. That indicates portals and stargates that you go through in set position. There's operation 144 flux of travel up communicates to its convergence set lines of travel. Okay? Very, very complicated stuff. It's set travel. Okay? Because you're no longer going to be 1 graph screens in that positions. Okay, humanity is going to be in a 7 paradigm. 7 paradigm. 7 proxy. 7 provisions. 7 cycles in 7 directions. So processing, performance, in your position and procedures. 3 centers of calculation. Center lines is 7 over lines, 5 travels, directing 12 centers into 24 line. Course centers back in set lines of 0 into 24 of dimensional solar sail. So your schematics are going to get a lot more complicated, but as you come into the no memory of its complication, that puts you into compliance and how to see it through all of your EQ, okay, in your systems. Remember, it's all capita. It's processed. It's much easier to formulate settings where an XD1000 picks up the platforms in your travel communication. Right? Because that's what you created in your anomalies, a space of time, in a boxing frame. 3 travels of point graphs, communications. So in that position lines and settings, the XD1000s are going to send you video graph screens back. Okay, so they say it's the package. You got the package, UPS, 2, 3 centers, line communications, sending and travel, the 144 flux, the anti-carrying comes in that position locations. Okay, they pick you up, they teleport you to that location. And that setting, right? So as you're traveling, like this in 3 platforms, and set lines of travel, constantly traveling in all levels existing in the real time, line conditions, everything happening all at once. Okay, you have a package, right? So they pick up the package and they basically drop you off at your destination, which is your hangar, your docking stay, your docking bay, right? So you plot it to back on your Earth in a triangulation. Okay, and then you continue on your path where you lift off in your conscious location, your platforms. Okay, so that's basically how it's set up through UPS. Then it comes in 144 anti-carrion. They are the taxi drivers to your system that picks up your packages and set lines of travel. This helps you to identify your system, how you come, and that's sending it's outgoing to incoming. Okay, outgoing mail to incoming, same thing, right? Through pi. Look at this, there it is in travel, right? You got mail, pick it up, and set lines of travel, okay? So there's no difference how you guys come into your own systems. It's just understand the distributions, the transit numbers. Your whole body is a transit number, and it's processed through a notification number that's a tracking number that helps you to identify your system, to know exactly how to process your set positions when you come in your package of design. Now this helps you to understand how to come into that position because it becomes the normal. So this helps you to really, everything that's going on with your system, okay, in your distribution centers, in your properties, in your assets. You guys are your own consumers now, okay, and it's much easier to see that in a 12-dimensional projection than a 3-dimensional storyline, okay? Because this is going to put you all levels of what you always are in is no memory of access to memory you already know. You're just coming back to who you are. Continue on like nothing happened. That is more powerful than you can imagine itself, guys. But then you start to recognize, wow, this is amazing stuff. You know, get a tracking number, you can call dispatch. Dispatch basically is it. Yeah, I got a sector vector quad unit. I sent a package line direct signals. I sent it 3 days in sequence. I want to know when it's coming to position notification. Yes, it's generally a right. Elevator music comes in. There is elevator music. It's pretty crazy stuff. It's just normal stuff to pick up locations. All right, so a waiting call comes in. Back to permits. Yes, your package will be delivered. Sorry about that. We're late in settings. We're just setting up new Galaxy shifting lines, of course, and it's a shipping containers offline setting. But the modification lines, we have your tracking number. You will receive your package in 2 days over a cycle. Copy that. Thank you very much. There, it's done. All right, it's all done. And that's the normal. Okay, so when you process these things, you start to recognize no memory, and the no memory comes back to you in set position. And then you understand, wow, this is amazing stuff. So the X8000s are sending packages of video files, right? Like you dancing or doing this or that or that or that, or like you're sending video files to each other, or you're sending comedy acts or line conditions or emojis or smiling or that position. It doesn't matter longitude or latitude. You guys are coming out of stillness of vision and cortex of schematics to Pi now. You're coming in running film strips or video projectors that you have to truly understand how to use it in a viewfinder. You don't know exactly how to do through Pi now. Is to set up your algorithms in a codification of time locking, of clocking measure. This helps you to identify your system, how to see yourself through your own set travel of slide projector, guys. Okay? So it's very powerful. We're all coming in as a travel. Okay, so once we send the transition box frames, puts all communication lines of 4 centers of sequence, 4 centers of scale, and 4 centers of position. Okay? Ground centers, triangulation, ground centers, triangulation, ground centers, triangulation. Okay? So, video file is basically, it's all geometry shapes, you know, and then you have your probings that drop it off. Then you have the basically processing that identification of orbs that get you in your position location and setting. The probing is the detection. Basically, if you missed your packages or you didn't receive your packages, that's what probes do. They detect the system. They give the tracking number. They go back to the actual unit that dropped off the package, which was the X8000. Apply the information setting and travel communicate lines. Did you receive the package lines setting direct location? Orbs coming in travel. Okay? So that's what the orbs do. The orbs drop off the package in that position. That's why you're seeing so many orbs. The probes are the detection, making sure you can receive your package and that tracking number. Outgoing, incoming. You got mail. You pick up your package, there it is. Remember, it's all memory you already know. So it's all memory that you're coming into, so it's much easier to come into your financial position, into your quantum queue. The quantum queue is your XQ, which is your ledger. Now understand how to process that. It's much better to understand how to see it through your assets, and understand how to get it through your properties, and how to get it through your formulas, and how to get it through its equation, and knowing exactly how to come into your financial fiat system that's given to you already, that you already achieved, that you already received. And it's much easier to modify because that's how they see you through tracking number. So anything misses in that positional case node cycle, that's what they do. That's what the probes do, and that's what the orbs do. The orbs drop it off, okay? So it's important to realize when you come into mothership, in that position, is mass and volume. So let's say you're manifesting, let's say your video file is a long string, and process of indication setting to travel. Okay, that's your video file that you're sending to the mothership, right? 4 to 3 centers, direction, okay? Platitude and operation set lines, graph lines, information system, and grounds, okay? So you platitude this way, and then you platitude 2 grounds of sequence. Remember, your crop circle can be any lines ascending and travel. This process of codification ascending into vortex location, time centers, time placements, time units, time calculation, time editing. Data files, operation sequence, platitude location lines of travel. Okay, there's the files that you're sending to the mothership. Mothership picks it up in rotation and travel. Okay, sonar lines, echo lines, screen adaptation process line, liquidation system brings in some lines of travel. Platitudes out in position location sending, sends it off, okay, in set position. Now, she stays there. She doesn't move, right? But she moves on her own system, right? She's the mass and volume. She's the main circuit. So processing that, she drops it off to the XT1000s. So the XT1000, let's say if there's, depending on mass and volume, right? On your, how many weight consumption you have in your set position, its operation, right? So what happens is the mothership basically drops off the packages to the other XT1000s. They pick it up and they distribute it in the same location, all right? So but they communicate with each other through telepathy, all right? It's pretty amazing. So mothership here in the center, okay? And let's get into, let's say your package is massive volume, is your weight consumption is 4, all right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? So they go in the same direction, okay, which is amazing. See, they go in the same direction and they drop off the package in that setting, okay? Confirmation in that position. So that's where it comes in. It comes in a timeline now. And that's how it works, right? So I'm just getting you guys to understand how it comes in a time replacement system and time frame. The time edit space line process indicates the system of the calculation timelines. Time centers, time square, time unit, time pi, okay? So that's where you have a time scale of a compass and location. Travis point lines graph, face direction of pattern direction of time centers and location of a cycle. I generates screen line adaptation of flux. So you come into time capacitor in positions time frame. That process lines of 4 frames that indicates the setting of 4 centers of scale. So that 4 centers location system in fortitude, longitude, latitude in screen adaptation of process lines of angles. Okay, so you get position here, comes to you, there's the package. XT1000's on standby, right there, right? Cloud screen comes in, converts the system and setting. Confirmation set calculation lines to alls, goes in position lines of probing, goes into its orbs, the set lines of travel, probing orbs, right? Now the orbs sets it to your hotel golf, box frame, house frame. Fail safe and travel, okay? There's your mail. That's how it's set up. That's how it's set up. Every single time. So it just comes in a time frame, guys. So there's nothing to wait for because you already received it already. It's much easier to identify and no memory. Memory is just a processing, but no memory is a higher level of set position. Now you see it in frequency because it's a video file. It's much easier to see it through a video file than it is to see through a photo op in stillness, right? The stills, the photo stills, the correlation systems, the photo ops, the backgrounds. There's no background, there's no foreground, there's no front ground, there's no side graphs. You have to indicate everything around your system is extremely fast in rotation. All right, so it's really interesting when you look at that, right? How it comes in all modifications, how you receive mail. Okay? So, hope everybody's getting a little bit more understanding how this all works, lines of provision now. Okay? All right, let's get into your test on Friday. Okay, so we're going to get a ground centers of 3 centers of pi. Okay? Split lines anomaly, time clockings of 3. Okay, set 4, 5, 6, 7 line setting. Set travel. So converts a time frame, clocking system, and set lines of scale. Okay, and set travel. Okay, so getting lines of screen adaptation, what a crop circle does is goes through Fibonacci rotation and travel. Okay, now it depends on where you are in massive volume, XT1000s, or where you are in setting, right? So they convert the system and they pick it up, right? Convert the system and they pick it up. Okay, that's how it works. Right? So each one is in the time clock centers in location system, and it's all through triangulation. The triangulation is your file, is your video file that distributes to the XT1000s of the mothership depending on the mass and volume. Let's just start with the triangulation settings into lines of 7 sequence. and codifications, right? So it's really interesting how you see that in Earth rotation, okay? That modifies every location of travel of indications, right? So it's all based on how to understand the connection of your cosmic wheel, your fortune wheel, your cosmic ledger, which is nothing but a quantum setting locations. Hold on in sentence sequence. So I really want you guys to indicate and understand how this all works through your data operating system. Okay? Now this is grounds of A, B, and C, guys. You have to process this. It's not doing it all over again. It's just adjusting what you already know through travel. Okay? This helps you to identify how to master yourself inside the mind itself, the alteration system, how to understand how to use your crop circles of design. Okay? So we'll get in that calculation setting. We'll stop right there and travel. We'll get an indication moving on, positions, how you come in your own set calculations and directions. All right, stopping panel, course centers and transmission, team centers. Take them out of tour, take them out of operation, bring them back information lines where they left off, and lines of grounds and hotel golf. Pop out uniform and set lines of position. Done by equation. Okay? So I hope you guys enjoyed that. The tour going through me. Questions and answers can come in information setting. Okay, it's something to get used to, right? We're just coming to the expansion into a new school adaptations because humanities coming to informations how to use their 12 centers into the connection of its earth, into all levels coming into the point 0 of 2-4 setting. The operative set calculates how they come into the video graph screens adaptation of that process their settings at all angles of set travel. Okay, have a wonderful day.